folks, we keep promising Rashad, and he has not delivered. But unfortunately, we have also lost James for this episode. So, coming here about the Midwest region of the NCAA tournament, Shane Smith alongside Bennett Rhodes. Bennett, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Uh, Excited for some basketball. So let's hop right into it. Make this a quick episode. Obviously, this Midwest region highlighted by the number 1 seed UVA, and UVA going up against number 16 Hampton. And I just don't see Hampton coming away with this.
No, not gonna happen.
So UVA should pull out a win here. The next one is the 8-9 matchup with Hubby Smith's Texas Tech Raiders versus the Butler Bulldogs. Personally here, I have Butler. Texas Tech too reliant on making jump shots, which they aren't that good at. So I have Butler winning this.
Yeah, for me, I picked Texas Tech on this one because I think they've had more exposure to tougher competition. I think this is gonna be a good game, but I was really back and forth. I think Texas Tech wins this because they've gone up against teams like Oklahoma, even though they lost to Kansas twice. I mean, the competition they face is a lot different than the competition Butler's faced, and I think that gives them a little bit of an advantage in this one. But I think this will be definitely one of those good 8-9 games.
Exactly. When you talk about competition, Texas Tech 11 games versus the top 25 compared to Butler's 8. Now we get into the 5-12 matchup with Purdue coming off their loss in the Big 10 championship game against a little-known team, Arkansas Little Rock. Now, Purdue, led by the big man A.J. Hammonds, they've been strong all year, 12-6 in the Big 10. Little Rock has been a popular upset choice, but I just don't see them taking down the height of Purdue.
Yeah, Little Rock, really great season. Only lost 4 games. But again, talking about exposure, did not face any top 25 teams. Again, this is a team that looked fun to watch. I watched their conference tournament. But in the end, I think Purdue, they've got multiple guys that are just big and strong and dominant inside. And I think that'll be too much for the upset here.
And we talk about that Texas Tech team. Little Rock and Texas Tech did meet earlier in the non-conference schedule, with Texas Tech winning a solid matchup by 12. Now into the 4-13 matchup, Iowa State, the 4 seed, versus Iona. Iowa State obviously led by senior leader Georges Niang, but going up against the Iona team that I actually have pulling the upset here. Iona will pull the upset here with A.J. English, very talented scorer, one of the best in the country. He will lead Iona to the 13-4 upset.
It's funny enough, I actually also have Iona winning this. This is one of the big ones. When I first saw it, I was thinking, Iona is just a team that scores a lot of points. Iowa State can do the same, but at the same time, I think Iona will be better in this situation. I think they can score more and defend better against this Iowa State team. I think Iowa State was just too inconsistent throughout the year, and even though Iona, not necessarily a fantastic schedule, for a team that could be pulling off an upset, I still do think they get this win. So I have to agree with you on that one. The 13 seed moving on.
So next we have the 6-11 matchup, Seton Hall, winners of the Big East, versus Gonzaga here. Seton Hall, not very known, but until they came and knocked off 2-seeded Xavier, then did the championship game where they knocked off 2-seeded Villanova. That's put them on the map, put them on a 6 seed. But I actually have them getting upset here by Gonzaga. Gonzaga led by senior star and Kentucky transfer Kyle Wiltjer, also Domantas Sabonis, and then even though they were able to overcome, now I might botch this name here, but I'm just going to say P. Karnowski here. Can't really pronounce that first name. A lot of foreign players on this Gonzaga team, but Wiltjer going to lead Gonzaga to a win over Seton Hall.
Yeah, this has been a very popular upset pick I'm hearing around, and even in the odds makers are saying this one's going to Gonzaga. But I picked Seton Hall. Really didn't know much about this team till I started watching them in the conference tournament, knocking off Xavier and Villanova back to back. I think that's really strong. I think this is a team that I look towards momentum to be favorable in them getting this win, and I really believe in this Seton Hall team to be a competitor. And this will be a tough game, but I think they'll move on from this one.
And also worthwhile noting that according to RPI and KenPom, that Gonzaga, the best odds of the double-digit seeds to advance to the Sweet 16. Now, we can do a unanimous pick here between Bennett and I. Utah over Fresno State. Utah led by Jakob Pertl. Going to take this one easy over the 14-seeded Fresno State.
Yeah, even though Fresno State beats a bubble team in San Diego State to get the automatic bid, not enough uh, on their resume. I still think Utah handles this one pretty nicely.
And now on to the 7-10 matchup. 7-seeded Dayton. Third straight appearance, NCAA Tournament appearance for them. Going up against Syracuse, led by Jim Boeheim. Personally here, I have Syracuse. For one, more exposure to the top 25, like you were talking about earlier with Texas Tech. 7 games in the top 25 against Dayton's 3. Syracuse able to knock off Duke. And one thing that Dayton's had trouble with, zone defenses. Syracuse obviously plays the Boeheim patented 2-3 zone. Dayton played a similar zone against Xavier, and they ended up losing by 29. Dayton not going to be able to hang with Syracuse here. Syracuse advances on.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on this one. Talk about that Gonzaga game having their odds. But when I really look at the double-digit seeds, I like Syracuse. They're a bubble team, but they had a really good resume. Sure, they had some inconsistencies, but I just think in the end, Dayton, great tournament team in the past. I just think they're going to be stopped by Syracuse here. Talk about that, the zone defense. And Dayton had, even though they had the win against Iowa, had a win against Vanderbilt, VCU, they lost to St. Joe's twice. They lost to Xavier by 29, like you said, and they lost to Chattanooga. So some team, I see a little bit of inconsistency themselves, and I just think Syracuse has come up against far better competition, which I think better prepares them for this kind of matchup.
And finally, just to speed things up, the final matchup, 2 versus 15, possible 1 seed, but not. Michigan State goes up against Middle Tennessee. Michigan State wins this game handily. So now, getting into the round of 32 here in the Midwest, I have UVA up against Butler. UVA, not a very pretty team, but they are led by senior leadership with Malcolm Brogdon, London Parentes. They are able to edge out a win here against the Bulldogs of Butler.
Yeah, I had Texas Tech, and I think in the end, I think this is just Virginia's too talented defensively. I don't think whether it's Butler or Texas Tech, again, that's going to be a good game. I think ultimately UVA is the winner.
Next up, I believe we both here had Purdue, the expected 5-12, versus an upset Iona team led by, of course, we touched on A.J. English, one of the more talented scorers. But unfortunately, this is where I think Iona's run ends. Purdue, too big, and they'll be able to shut down English with athletic guards. Purdue advances on to play UVA.
Yeah, I got to agree with you here. Cinderella story is going to end here for Iona. I just think in the end, Purdue is just going to be too big, too powerful. I think they'll go on to face Virginia in the Sweet 16.
And then we have the 11 versus 3 matchup. Gonzaga able to escape Seton Hall to play Utah. But again, another Cinderella story ended here by a higher seed. Utah, led by future NBA star Jakob Pertl, able to shut down Gonzaga with Kyle Wiltjer and Sabonis. Utah going to advance to the Sweet 16.
So I had Seton Hall in this game against the popular upset pick, and I'm gonna have to continue to go with Seton Hall. This is one of the ones where I really thought about, and it was tough, but I just think Utah has been a little inconsistent. Sure, they do have the talent there, but I think Seton Hall uses their momentum and continues on. This is one I did go back and forth on, though. When you look at it, though, I just thought like Utah, a couple bad losses, and I think Seton Hall coming off their most recent better losses, I think better puts them in a better situation to kind of keep that momentum going.
And finally, we talked about Syracuse going up against Michigan State. Syracuse, a semi-upset of Dayton. But again, in my eyes, double-digit seed stops here. Syracuse going to lose to Michigan State, led by Denzel Valentine, Player of the Year candidate. Michigan State advancing to, in my eyes, going to play Utah.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you here. Syracuse, I do like them in that first round, but it's gotta eventually stop, and I think Michigan State's just too strong. I love Denzel Valentine, watching him play. The way he incorporates everyone on the court, but also is able to get it done himself. I think they can handle this game pretty easily and advance to the Sweet 16.
And finally, we've reached the Sweet 16 of the Midwest, Final Four of the Midwest, if you want to call it that. I believe we both have Virginia versus Purdue here. Well, unfortunately for Purdue, the big man, it's got to stop here. UVA uses talented guards to get to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I agree with you here. The guards of Virginia just get so much done, and they're so strong defensively that this is where eventually Purdue will reach the point where the big guys and even the guards on the team will not be able to put up the numbers I think because they had a favorable. I mean, you look at it coming up against the the Iona team we both picked. I just don't see them getting by Virginia after what could be considered a kind of favorable schedule if Iona gets that upset.
And finally, of the Sweet 16 matchups, we have 3-seeded Utah versus 2-seeded Michigan State. Both very talented, experienced teams, but Michigan State going to get to the Elite Eight for two reasons here. One, Denzel Valentine, always a triple-double threat, and also the fact that they are 5-1 against the top 25, while Utah sitting at, a mediocre 3-5 here. Michigan State advancing to play Virginia.
Yeah, I had Michigan State Seton Hall, and Seton Hall was kind of my Cinderella story, if you want to say, because I didn't really see any, double-digit seeds worthy of getting to this point, but I think Seton Hall's going to get stopped here. Michigan State, talked about it, Denzel Valentine. I'll say it again and again. He's one of the better guards out there, and they're just so good up against the tough opponents, and I think they'll continue. Because this is a team we've seen them all year. They had that stretch in the middle of the year where they lost a couple in a row. I think it was 3 in a row actually. But they're so good when they build momentum, and I think this is the perfect opportunity for them to really kind of burst out of the Midwest region here and get to the Elite Eight to play Virginia.
So, you said it there. We both have the 1 versus 2 matchup. Virginia versus Michigan State. This will be the third straight year that these two teams meet in the tournament. Last year, of course, Michigan State the 7 seed, UVA the 2 seed. Michigan State upsets them in the round of 32. Michigan State eventually going on to the Final Four. And you touched on Michigan State's struggles midway through the conference season. Virginia also had this too. Uh, they had some poor losses to, I believe, teams like Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. But and that compares to Michigan State. But here we go. Michigan State, again, Denzel Valentine plays a part. Virginia going to struggle without, really powerful offense. Michigan State, my pick from the Midwest to advance to the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. Michigan State, there's a certain point where Virginia's defense, which again we touched on it being very strong, has to be stopped because Michigan State, they're such a deadly three-point team. I mean, they can hit a lot of threes, and Denzel Valentine can control the game in a way that it's almost impossible to stop. We've seen teams try to stop it, struggle to stop it, and I think Michigan State is ultimately too strong for a Virginia team that's versatile in its own ways, but not good enough to beat the Michigan State team.
And finally, just to recap our Final Four picks so far. So I have out of the South, Miami. Out of the West, Oklahoma. Out of the Midwest, Michigan State. Just give me your quick recap of yours, Bennett.
So initially I did have Villanova in the first video, but I did think about it, and I'm going to make a change. I did make the change earlier today. Um, and I went with Arizona coming out of the South. The only reason I'm doing that is because, again, we brought up in that first video that Villanova is not a good tournament team. And when I look back on the numbers, which I didn't do an incredible amount of research beforehand on, I do think that Arizona ultimately comes out. Then I have Texas A&M, and then we do both agreed on that Michigan State team out of the Midwest.
So there we go. Three Final Four picks between the two of us. We're hoping to bring you guys the fourth and final, the East region, headlined by North Carolina, coming up in these next coming days. And hopefully we'll be able to get in Rashad Christian and James Fusco back for the final episode, where we will also highlight our Final Four picks. So I'm Shane Smith alongside Bennett Rhodes. Thanks for watching All Sports Talk Now.